Secretary Clinton is just speaking the facts. When we passed the Epstein Transparency Act 427-1 in the House and 100-0 in the Senate, we had veto-proof majorities that they're filled with redactions, what they're releasing. They're protecting people who have actually committed crimes or who allegedly abused some of these survivors. The problem is they've already released so much that is leading to international scandals, that is leading to France to say we're going to have a prosecuting committee. The British monarchy is having to answer questions. The British government is in trouble. Here you've had resignations at Goldman Sachs' lawyers, powerful law firms.
Well, this is interesting. The state of New Mexico now has a new probe into Epstein's ranch there. Survivors have said they were abused. That ranch has been known for a long time. What we're seeing is how information, investigation, and public pressure can lead to investigations that otherwise were not going to happen. What we're learning, again, from this unusual transparency effort shows how a group can collude with dark secrets if they serve their interests. The price of admission to Epstein's world was, the Times says, silence.
Oh, I am so tired of watching powerful people treat the Epstein story like it is gossip. It is not. Now, the UN experts are reportedly saying these crimes could hit the level of crimes against humanity. That is a global alarm bell. And it lands right when the US is getting hammered over transparency. Pam Bondi is catching heat for how she handled questions. Kash Patel is in the middle of it, too. So yeah, let's get into what this means and who's suddenly nervous. If you love explosive content like this and want to see more, click that subscribe button.
First off, in your view, is what the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, what she said, is that true?
No. I mean, look, Secretary Clinton is just speaking the facts. She's not making any allegations. She didn't even mention the word Donald Trump. She's a brilliant lawyer. She read the Epstein Transparency Act that Thomas Massie and I passed, and she's simply stating that they're filled with redactions, what they're releasing. They're protecting people who have actually committed crimes or who allegedly abused some of these survivors. They failed to protect some of the survivors, and they should come clean, just have a full release of these files. And even the Republicans don't believe Pam Bondi. Ask Congresswoman Nancy Mace or Congressman Massey. There's talk of doing a subsequent bill to strengthen the Epstein Transparency Act.
Do you think that could actually happen?
I hope it doesn't take that because the law is already clear. But remember, Caitlin, we passed the Epstein Transparency Act 427-1 in the House and 100-0 in the Senate. We had veto-proof majorities. That's why President Trump signed it. And I have not met a single person who worked on this who believes that they have been transparent in the disclosures. The problem is they've already released so much that is leading to international scandals, that is leading to France to say we're going to have a prosecuting committee. The British monarchy is having to answer questions. The British government is in trouble. Here you've had resignations at Goldman Sachs' lawyers, powerful law firms. And so the American public want more information.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and part of what's happening here is mainly Congress when it comes to who they're investigating. The Clintons are going to be testifying in separate closed-door depositions. That's scheduled for next week. She was asked about pictures of the former president, Bill Clinton, obviously her husband, that were released in the Epstein files. And this is what Hillary Clinton told the BBC.
Do you know the context surrounding some of those images?
Absolutely. And it wasn't a hot tub on a plane. It was one of the stops they made to look at philanthropic and charitable work that my husband has done, saving literally millions of lives around the world. It turned out that was done long before there was any public awareness and certainly any conviction of any crime by Jeffrey Epstein. If Bill and I had a penny for every person we've taken pictures with, we would be extremely rich today.
Do you think that's, I guess, a sufficient answer, or do you feel like you still have more questions for the former president about what has surfaced in the Epstein files?
We have more questions for President Clinton. He needs to be fully transparent, and he needs to explain the extent of his relationship with Epstein. He needs to explain whether he knew if other rich and powerful men were visiting the Epstein Island? Did he know if other men were abusing girls? He needs to answer about how Epstein made all this money. Why is it that Epstein is frequenting with world leaders? So, of course, he's going to have to be fully transparent. And that's why I and others who are Democrats have said we want transparency. But here's what I will say about President Clinton. At least he's coming and he's going to answer these questions. I mean, what about Donald Trump? What about Lutnick? What about a lot of the other rich and powerful people who are ducking any accountability?
Can I ask about one person? Because I know the House Oversight Committee, members of it, are going to Ohio tomorrow to speak to the former CEO of Victoria's Secret. That's Les Wexner. His name had been in the files, was redacted in one piece, then unredacted last week after Thomas Massie had called it out. He had a long financial and personal relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He's denied wrongdoing. What information are you hoping to gain from him in this deposition?
What was his financial relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Point blank, did he ever abuse young girls? And did he know of other people who were abusing young girls? How many times did he visit the island? How did Epstein make his money? So he has a lot to answer for. But it's not just him. My view is every single person who has emails showing that they visited the island, especially after Epstein was a convicted pedophile, should be coming before the Congress and answering questions and be investigated. And the Justice Department should start a special prosecution investigatory committee into this issue. I mean, I get texts from survivors. I got one today with a name of someone in the file saying, what's happening? Send this to justice. Why aren't they doing anything? The survivors didn't just want these names out there. They wanted action.
Okay, pause. The redactions thing is not some boring paperwork fight. Redactions are power. Redactions are how you turn a trafficking network into a vague true crime podcast, and you never name the people who enabled it. And Pam Bondi sitting there acting offended in that hearing. Come on. This is the same Pam Bondi with a long history of doing convenient things when it benefits Trump world. People remember the Trump University mess in Florida. So when she's evasive now and won't even offer a clean apology to survivors as reported by Time, it reads like a pattern, not a one-off. And look who's standing behind the curtain. Kash Patel running the FBI. A guy who came up through loyalty politics, not independence. So yeah, when Axios reports a watchdog alleging missing communications from Bondi, Blanche, Patel in a massive document release, my brain immediately goes, okay, so who's being protected and why? Because Congress passed that transparency law basically unanimously. If it's still a fog machine, that's a choice. Next week's hearings and depositions, that's where the pressure gets real.
Now, Republican Thomas Massie, who has been really seen as a good faith bipartisan collaborator here, working with Democrats to get to the bottom of this, says on any given day, I need one or two of my own co-conspirators to get something done. Once we get past Republican primaries, I think you're going to see defections. That's his reference to the fact that Trump still has, of course, more sway in primary season, but there is a lot more that they can do if they get the votes. Now, what's happening out there? What has happened in places where we've seen that the files show prosecutors and investigators might have been pressured out of doing a full investigation or fallen down on the job, and the things we've shown you on our timeline? Well, this is interesting. The state of New Mexico now has a new probe into Epstein's ranch there. Survivors have said they were abused. That ranch has been known for a long time. What we're seeing is how information, investigation, and public pressure can lead to investigations that otherwise were not going to happen. Colombia has now sanctioned 2 individuals that they think helped Epstein's girlfriend gain admission there, again, through how his largesse may have distorted things far away from his own accused sex crimes, but just the sort of way he wielded influence. 2 prominent business people facing consequences over their ties to Epstein. We reported, for example, on the Wasserman issue, his ties to Maxwell, not to any alleged crimes per se, have led to him having to sell off his entire talent agency. Others across the spectrum facing subpoenas or these pressure points we've shown you. The New York Times asked, why didn't anyone say something? And that what we're learning, again, from this unusual transparency effort shows how a group can collude with dark secrets if they serve their interests. The price of admission to Epstein's world was, the Times says, silence. And so when you look at this entire issue, it has really gone topsy-turvy. It started as something that was so under-investigated with so little accountability that became part of the scandal. And the question over years, would he really get away with it forever? And then, of course, he was ultimately, Mr. Epstein was indicted. He died in prison, awaiting trial. Maxwell later indicted and convicted. So you had some baseline accountability, though very delayed. And the idea was, well, leave it there. And Donald Trump repeatedly said, leave it there. It's old news. Nothing more to see here. But he was overruled.
Man, listen, when the United Nations is out here basically saying this wasn't just a scandal, but could meet the threshold for crimes against humanity, that's not spicy language. That is the world screaming. This was systematic. It was organized. It crossed borders. And the victims were treated like disposable. And what does that do? It changes the moral math. It tells every country that looked the other way, every institution that took the money and kept their mouth shut, every fixer who smoothed things over. You don't get to file this under old news. You don't get to run out the clock. That's the whole point of the crimes against humanity frame. Time doesn't wash it away. So watching New Mexico reopen the ranch probe and other countries taking real actions, sanctions, consequences, investigations, it makes the US government's vibe under Trump look even worse. Not because America is incapable, because the leadership choice has been to treat accountability like an inconvenience. And yeah, I'm going to say it. When Trump's instinct is reportedly to push move on energy, that's not leadership. That's risk management. And the thing that should freak everyone out is this is how democracies rot. Not with one big cartoon villain moment, with silence. With institutions deciding it's easier to protect powerful connections than protect regular people. So here's my ask. Don't let this become content. Call your members of Congress. Back the Inspector General audit. Demand clean, unredacted explanations for what was withheld and why. And in the comments, tell me this. Who benefits from everyone moving on? Because it sure as hell isn't the survivors.